Welcome to Deep Thought. New ways of thinking are needed. New ways of thinking are needed. And I'm going to tell you what, and this is very important to consider. When I talk about new ways of thinking, I don't mean like as individuals, because I always promote that anyway. I promote every individual thinking, but I'm just saying overall, as a collective, new schools of thought are needed because things are changing. Now, people might think, okay, with the COVID vaccines and everything, things will go back to normal. Nah. And I've talked about that before. Because I'm going to tell you what, the economy, especially, the economy, the way of life of people, since the economy and how people live are greatly connected. Indeed, an economy is a very much a social thing anyway. It's a social thing because it's a social thing. What people, what people want, what they demand, and then what's supplied to them. That's all it is, supply and demand. But if people, you have a situation where people ain't demanding anything because, well, they don't have money to demand it, or you can't even get the people to supply somebody to supply it. That's an issue. And that's something more for my business channel, but it still affects us because the economy affects how you live. It affects what you do and everything. And really, it's deeper than money, but it's how we think. Because I'm gonna tell you what, the economy itself, the way of life of people was going down for a while. The middle class is shrinking, and it's been shrinking. I mean, COVID just sped things up. That's all it did. COVID just sped things up that was happening anyway. Businesses were going out. People were going out of business, everything. And even though people will look at the official unemployment stats, the unemployment stats only count people who are getting unemployment at the time. There's a point where people, they come out of that. They not getting unemployment or anything. They just don't have any money coming in. They're not counted. There's always been a lot of them. I saw a number one time a few years ago said it was 100 million. So then that was when it was supposedly low unemployment. So I need to find that number again or the actual numbers, but it's hard because they can't track it. They not in the system anymore, right? So one of the things that has to do with the economy and everything, the way of life has to do with how people think, the school of thought and everything. And what's going to be needed to really get, maybe I ain't going to say back to normal, but to a way where you have a critical mass of people really enjoying their lives. It's just different ways of thinking. That's going to be the key. That is going to be the key. How people are thinking, new ways of thinking, how we look at things, how we interact with each other, and look, I'm going to put it out there. A big problem in the economy and how things are going is racism. It's racism. I saw a report. It was from, I think it was from either Chase Bank or Citibank, where there were trillions of dollars lost because of racism. But that's a way of thinking. If somebody is going to deny a loan or not hire somebody or anything based on the person's race, and you can even extend that maybe to gender, and you can maybe even extend that to sexual orientation, they losing out. Now, of course, from a personal basis, I'm definitely paying attention to racism against black people. Now, if somebody, say, denies a housing loan to somebody who, they wanted to move into a certain area, but because this place is practicing redlining, this person can't, that's actually losing money for the economy. Because if someone moves in, like say somebody black moves into a $500,000 house, right, in a certain neighborhood, yeah, you might have some neighbors having an issue with it, but that person's, one, they paying that mortgage. Two, they got to furnish the house. That's spending money. They got to keep the yard up and everything. That's spending money. They taking utilities and, all these stuff they got to eat. So then they supporting local grocery store. So that actually creates more money. That actually creates more money, but we have a way of thinking where people deny them on that basic thing. And that's just one way. That's just one way. If people don't, I mean, come on. Apparently, if we even in this position, a lot of stuff has to change in how people think, because then actions follow thought. Actions follow thought. Now, if people open up their thinking more, that opens up everything else, the way of life and everything, letting people live. People feel good, right? Let me use that racism example again, because this is a good one. Everybody understand it. If you got a bunch of stressed people because of racism, okay, one, they ain't spending as much money. Two, that's putting a strain on the medical system. That's putting a strain. And that affects it. Or if they're not feeling good, people spend money more when they feel good. And that's just the money thing. There's more peace in society when people feel good, because you know what? How we approach relationships, that's a school of thought. When people say, well, this person got to make a certain amount of money and they got to have a credit score, that's a school of thought. That has nothing to do with character. And then a lot of people getting together off some superficial things, some arbitrary objective numbers or something. It was like, well, what's that going to do for them getting along? And then that creates more. Say a couple gets married off some superficial thing, because, something said, a school of thought said, well, they should get married, even though, personality wise, they not really compatible. Right. And then you get, they get married, maybe have some kids, but then, that thing the reality is it comes to a point where everything comes to a head and, the couple breaks up, but then that creates a problem. And you got two people who might have a level of depression, and then it's affecting the children, and then no telling what else that can affect. See, one thing, everything touches everything else out here. That's very important to understand. Everything touches everything else out here. So, in order to change everything, we got to change the school of thought overall, all the way around, not just in one area, but just everything to really bring about peace. People got to think about how they do things. And it's powerful. Just people first thinking and then taking action on something changes everything up. That's the change. People talk about change. Start with your thinking. And then if you have one person who thinks that a certain idea and then share it with another person, it can spread. In fact, just one person can change the world. And y'all know how I flow on there. You're like, wow, Rom, you getting into economics, all that. But follow me on this. Say a person has a new idea, a new way of thinking, and they share it with simply two other people, right? That's it, two other people. And that might not seem much. They say, okay, you got three people thinking a certain way. But then that person who shared it with the first person, they share it not just with those two people. Well, no, let me make it fun. They just share it with those two people. Maybe they quiet otherwise and everything, just doing their thing, right? But then those two people share it with two more people, or even say they even expand that. Well, no, let me keep it simple. They share it with two more people. So you start out with one, then it's two, and then it's four more. Now you got 7 people believing in something. But each time, each person shares it with two people, right? And they adopt it. Before you know it, you'll have millions on one idea, right? Or you could, and it could come different ways. Say that first person just shares the idea or the thoughts with one person a day who adopts the idea in a year. That's 365 people. And then they do the same thing and it expands. So a person, and then once people, you have a critical mass of people who think a certain way and they behave a certain way, it changes everything, how people relate, how people spend their money, how people live. That's how powerful. That's powerful, right? And I just wanted to say that. I wanted to say that. Because you know how I flow on this channel. And I was just like, wow, that just came to me. But it's powerful. It mean, but however it happens, new ways of thinking are needed out here in the world. So that's all I have for today. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace and blessings.